I am Patricia Wilburn Hunter, and my father was the first Black police officer here in Winter Haven. I think it was in the 50s. I'm not sure, but you can get that information through the city of Winter Haven. But he became the first police officer, and um, I know I was very young. I was kind of in elementary school at that time. And we just knew Dad became a police officer. And his normal route was Florenceville, what we call Florenceville. It was a certain part of Winter Haven, like up from Lake Silver to over Lake Maud, and then back in the unincorporated areas, I would think in Winter Haven, where Boggy Bottom is now. That's what they used to call it, Boggy Bottom. So then the police officers had a territory only they would work, and that would be where African American people lived. So if it was anything outside that area, he did not touch. He was a police officer until his death. He had become a police officer. They had hired another police officer, Mr. Tuggerson. Jim Tuggerson came into town, and then he was had been a baseball player, and he was one who came, and he had brothers with him, and they took care of that by inviting Jim Tuggerson was his name, by inviting him to become a police officer as well. So then he was the second police officer. And Joel Wilburn, he entered into personal business. He and my mother, Gertie Wilburn, who was also a teacher, high school teacher at Jewett High School. And they entered into business. So they owned apartments. And those apartments included, I was just talking to Ms. Williams, Myrtle, and she recalled that we used to live on the same street next door, and she rented from my father. So he created housing. My grandfather, for $8 a week. That was the rent, $8 a week. And then I think he upped the rent to $11 a week. And then he built 3 other apartments behind that. And then we lived in a house that was the front house. And then he rented 2 apartments behind that. I remember those because some of those students and I went to elementary and high school together. But we also had no abilities to get the kind of care from the city. African Americans were limited as to what they could get from the city, as in water or sewage lines or that. And they had for years. And in fact, it even creeped up to when I came back to help my mom. And I came back in the 70s, early 70s, and we still had trouble getting pure water from the city of Winter Haven. My grandfather, my mother's father, was a builder, and he built, that was John W. Cunningham, John Wesley, and he had a son who's John K. Cunningham. And John Wesley built a lot of housing in Winter Haven and right in the Florence Villa area. And that's when rent, I guess, started going up to $25 to $50. But we provided a lot of affordable housing, I would call it, for African Americans in the Florence Villa area. And we pretty much remain that way now. My husband and I carry on the business that they had, and we still are affordable more than anywhere else in town. My father was also a member of Williams Temple Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, and that CME was back in the old days Colored Methodist Episcopal Church. It's a part of the United Methodists. Okay, so they know us, and the United Methodist Church here was always a part of our church because we all believed the same things, and they taught us and we taught them. They did that for years until their missionary died, Mrs. Hyde. Can't remember her first name, but she was very instrumental in keeping us connected, the two churches. And that our church still exists on Quinton Avenue in the same place. The person who actually started that church, Reverend Allen, he raised his children in Winter Haven as well. So we rebuilt the church. It started in 1913, and it was rebuilt because I think in 1922 I saw a picture of the church then, and I remember it had a bell and steeple, and we would go and ask my dad, can we go ring the bell for Sunday school? Because that's what they did in those days. We would say, it's time to go to church. Well, we want to ring the bell, but we could walk down the street to our church. Let's see. My dad extended his business into the laundromat on First Street. That was I think it was probably in the late 60s, early 70s. And he built a laundromat so that people in the community would have somewhere to go wash their clothes, because we weren't allowed down in the area of Winter Haven where African Americans were not really permitted unless you were working, cleaning, or doing that kind of work. So we stayed in that laundromat, and I'm kind of far away from the year now because I know that when I returned to Winter Haven, because we went off to college, my sister and I, it was just two of us, and we went off to Virginia to Hampton University now. And so when we came back, I came back to help after my dad died. And so my mom still owned the laundromats at that time. By that time, it was not only that laundromat, but he opened one in Haines City. And then open another one in Winter Haven on Avenue T. And then he opened one at Palm Place. So we had that many laundromats. Then they came in after he passed. My mother and I decided that we needed to not work so many because the repairs were getting heavier. I could jump over the machines and get to the back because I was skinny, and I could get back there. But I remember the guys would come and look, and they said, "You're jumping over those washers?" I said, "That's the only way we can get back here." So you either had to be a male or you had to wear pants and jump over them, and I would get back there. And the man who repaired those washers when they were out of order came out of Tampa. So nobody in Winter Haven knew how to do that. And so he would show me little tricks to fix it until he could get there. After that, we decided to go out of business because it was getting too much for me, and then I needed to go to work where I really made money, but I was helping my mom as though she lived. That was her business. And then I graduated from Florida Southern College in Lakeland, and I just needed a year and a half to get out. And then I started teaching at Winter Haven High School, where my mother was a teacher at the end. She started at Jewett High School. At the time, that was the black school. And then when integration started, then that's when they moved the teachers from Jewett High School to Winter Haven High School. And that was in the 70s, the later 70s, because I have to try to remember when I got in. I got married in 75, so I think that's about the time that I started teaching at Winter Haven High School, and I taught there for 6 years, I think, and then moved on to the Polk State College because one of my teachers at Florida Southern thought I would do better in an adult situation. So I took her advice and got hired over there, and I stayed there for 11 years. And then from there, I went back to the public school system. And we usually move, when we move like that, we move either for a position or for money. And I moved for money and went back to the school system. And then from there, I got into administration and then moved to the district office. So I was an administrator for vocational and adult education, which was more my category, and stayed there until I retired. So it has been a long journey. We can't even imagine, because at my age now, where I am, I have students who recognize me before I recognize them, and they speak to me in Publix, and I have one who just loved me forever. So if I go in Publix at Northgate, then she's gonna grab me if she's working that day, give me a great big hug. So I just love that, and it makes you feel good to know that you touched somebody's life positively.